Good afternoon, good evening, good morning for those who are joining us from across the Atlantic. Welcome to the 2022 Africa Agribusiness Outlook launch, whose theme is making Africa an even better place to do agribusiness, because indeed the African continent is where we have opportunity to make a lot more money as we do agribusiness. My name's Valentine Miheso. A program officer responsible for partnerships based at Agra's Nairobi office. And it's my pleasure this evening, I will be your moderator. Welcome again. This event will officially launch the second edition of the Africa Agribusiness Outlook Report, which is a survey of CEOs across sub-Saharan Africa from diverse sectors working in the agribusiness ecosystem. The survey is a joint publication of Agra and KPMG East Africa. And we are really, really glad that you've made the time to join us today for the official launch of this particular report. I would like to bring to our attention, I know we are all aware, but I think it's important that we keep reminding ourselves that Africa and by extension, the rest of the world, we are actually staring at a crisis because all the statistics we've received, especially last year towards the Food System Summit and even towards COP26, we are facing a serious crisis to feed sustainably our populations. And even as we go into this evening session, I think it's critical that we keep that in mind, that one of the key things we would like to get out of this session is how do we engage our agribusinesses to ensure that we are feeding the African population in a sustainable manner, but also in the process ensuring that we are making money for the smallholder farmer and for all the value chain actors. And this afternoon, this evening, this morning, for those of you who are joining us from the Atlantic, we have a very strong team that will be sharing with us a couple of ideas and engagements specifically on this report, but also giving us a broader view on the African agriculture ecosystem. And this particular evening, we will be hearing from some of our senior leaders, both from KPMG and Agra. And we have a very able panel that will field a couple of questions. And just for some housekeeping, I would like to remind our guests this evening that as the session is proceeding on, please do share your questions in the question and answer button so that we can be able to respond to them and do any follow-up if necessary. And we will endeavor to ensure we respond to all your questions. So without further ado, I would like to invite the CEO of KPMG East Africa to give us some opening remarks, just to share with us a flavor of what we are looking for this evening. Welcome.
Thank you very, very much, Valentine. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all. And let me just start by recognizing the importance of this to us as KPMG. And first of all, recognize Dr. Agnes Karibata, President Agra. It's a great partnership that we have between KPMG, East Africa, and Agra as we go through this very important journey. I also would like to recognize valuable partners under the Partnership for Inclusive Agriculture Transformation in Africa. And this afternoon, from my East African perspective, our panelists, the distinguished panelists that we have for the day. Ladies and gentlemen, I am very delighted to be speaking to you this afternoon as we release results of the 2022 Africa Agribusiness Outlook Survey. I'm particularly very excited because of the impact that an optimally working agribusiness sector in Africa would have, not only on the continent, but to the world's entire population. If I come back to KPMG, our purpose is to inspire confidence and empower change. We do this by delivering insights that leads to new opportunities and better outcomes for our clients, communities, and society. Together with AGRA, we have a shared vision that transforming agribusiness ecosystem in Africa, and most especially the smallholder farmer, is a sure path to Africa's transformation. It is an imperative for me in the realization of both the Africa Agenda 2063 and the UN SDGs on attaining food security and improved nutrition, ending hunger, and promoting sustainable agriculture. This survey that we do seeks to identify real issues that negatively hinder the unlocking of Africa's huge agribusiness potential, and most importantly, provide proposals on policy interventions that could help the continent make progress towards sustainable agriculture. But truly speaking, the Africa story is a paradox. It is well documented that agriculture is the most important economic activity on the continent. We know that it provides is a source of livelihood to approximately 70% of the African population. It contributes on average about 30% of each African country's GDP. We do also know that Africa has approximately 60% of the world's uncultivated arable land. Yet, Africa is a net importer of food, and we have said this many times. The continent only produces just about 10% of world's agricultural output. We have learned, and I hope we have, huge lessons from the COVID-19 disruptions to the supply chains and the current geopolitics that are culminating into the ongoing crisis in Ukraine and Russia. In my view, this presents an immediate call to action for our African governments, and indeed all other stakeholders, to move swiftly beyond the well-documented blueprints that we see on agriculture transformation and get to accelerating their implementation. This has got to be done through swift policy interventions that should reverse the pervasive land degradation on the continent, that should promote land and soil management, while at the same time encouraging sustainable care and management of farmland. This needs to be through also implementation of progressive soil health management systems to improve crop yields and enhance productivity, to proactively deal with the existential threat arising from climate change, amongst many others. Overall, in my view, there is an immediate need for a holistic policy intervention that covers the entire value chain, from land system to production to processing, distribution, and marketing of agricultural produce on our continent. It requires a very focused and deliberate mechanism to not only enhance agricultural productivity, but ultimately enhance the small farmers' economic empowerment. And we know how much this group that we're focusing on contributes to GDP and the uplifting of the livelihoods of the majority on the continent. I really look forward to the results of the survey, the panel discussions this afternoon, and most importantly, the next steps on how we can contribute in transforming this very critical sector on our continent. I wish you all very fruitful deliberations. Thank you very, very much. Back to you, Valentine.
Thank you so much, Benson, for such a wonderful opening remarks. And for all our delegates this afternoon, I would encourage you to tweet, and please, in the process as you tweet, the hashtag is Africa Agribusiness Outlook, and please tag along at Agra Alliance and also at KPMG East Africa. So please tweet. We really want to see ourselves trending this particular afternoon and to the better part of tomorrow. So with that, I would like to invite Dr. Agnes Kalibata, who is the president of AGRA, to give us the keynote address. Welcome, Dr. Kalibata.
Thank you, Valentine, and it's really good to see you all. Thank you, Benson, for those introductory remarks. And I give my welcome to all the colleagues, all our partners on the panel today, but also everybody that has joined this meeting. These are interesting times to be in the business of agribusiness. When you look at where we are coming from and what has happened in the last 5 years, it's really just one challenge after another. So let me just give me a second. Give me a second. Can you remove the phone, please? So I was just saying that these are very interesting times to be in the business of agribusiness, and here is why. In the last 5 years alone, what did we go through? Since 2014, we've seen declines in yields as a result of climate change. That impacts businesses that are in direct farming, that impacts businesses that are processing under capacity because we can't get enough. As if that wasn't enough, especially here in Kenya and East Africa, we go through the fall armyworm and the locust invasion that are associated with climate change too, and have exactly the same challenge of reducing yields. Right on top of that comes COVID-19. This report does dwell a little bit on COVID-19, but the biggest challenge of COVID-19 is the disruptions that you saw in supply chains, in the work that you do. I mean, I can't talk about this more than you people that do these businesses, that are in the business of engaging around food. You know how much businesses were affected, and we're going to be discussing that. And then come November, and gas prices, fuel prices just make it so difficult again to be a business in agribusiness. Today, as we are speaking, because of the Ukraine crisis, Ukraine-Russia crisis, and on top of all these crises that don't seem to go away, is the fact that we are actually, our food prices are higher than the food prices of 2008. And you know what happened in 2008? We had the Arab Spring that happened as a result of what was going on. So we do believe that with now fertilizer prices at 40% of where they were just 6 months ago, with now food prices in many cases 50% of what they were just 6 months ago, we are in for really, really interesting times ahead in the area of agribusiness. We will still be continuing and struggling to increase yields. We'll still be continuing and struggling to process and put enough food in our businesses and through our businesses, and we'll still be struggling to get affordable financing, which seems to be highly challenged at these times. But even as I say that, I see some light at the end of the tunnel, and here is why. We eat, we all eat, and many of us eat 3 times a day, and this is not going to go away, right? We can do it too. We import a lot of food. We import about $50 billion worth of food. Maybe this is the time we get to change that trajectory around. So what we need to do then? What do we need to do then as a community that has the ability to change this trajectory, to turn around $50 million, to take advantage of the market that we have not taken advantage of until now, to ensure that we produce quantity and quality to ensure that we add value where we should be adding value, to ensure that we reduce losses, because these are all dollar, you can put dollar values to all these things. And to ensure that we professionalize our businesses so that we can give the best value to ourselves, but also to the businesses we work with. But most of all, to ensure that we get our continent out of the hunger situation that is in and out of poverty. Because Africa seems to be synonymous with hunger and poverty. And yet the answer is nowhere else. It is in agribusiness. Can we actually take the wind? Every situation has an interesting side to it. In this particular case, climate change actually has an opportunity to be giving us here. the fact that everybody's asking whether we can do shorter value chains. Coming out of the Food System Summit, the thing that is most important here today is people are saying, why aren't we processing in Africa? Why aren't we adding value in Africa? Why is this food going miles and coming back here? So for me, these are all opportunities. This is the light at the end of the tunnel that I was talking about. And these are the things that we must do. But the thing is, nobody can do it alone. We all have a shared vision. That's the reason we are here today. But we also must make it a shared responsibility to each come through on what we do and come through very well so that this business of agribusiness can grow. That comes all the way from production and policies to financing and ensuring that businesses get funded, and to markets to ensure that farmers have markets. So I'm excited to listen to this report that is coming out today, to see how businesses are growing on this continent. I'm excited about the partnership we have with KPMG to keep bringing out the key issues that face businesses and to work with you all to understand the best way to resolve them. And I'm excited to continue working with you to ensure that we can actually understand and exploit the opportunity that sits in agribusinesses. So thank you for having me. And I look forward to being part of this meeting. Thank you, Valentine.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kalibata and colleagues. I think that's quite a serious rallying call. There is opportunity. Even as there's adversity, there's a lot of opportunity for us to actually do better and feed our continent and actually make money. As we speak now, we are at 195 delegates from across the African continent, from Nigeria, from Ghana, from Ivory Coast, Malawi, Zambia, Tanzania, Uganda. We have delegates from America, from Europe. So you see, we are really global community this morning or this afternoon, depending on your time zone. And I really want to welcome you for those who are just joining us. I would like to encourage you to keep tweeting. We have to trend this afternoon because food is important and Africa is important. The hashtag is #Africa Agribusiness Outlook. Please tag at KPMG East Africa and at Agra Alliance. And I don't want to really stand in between you and the wonderful results of the survey. As a matter of fact, the survey is a reflection of your views because we reached out to you to hear what your views are. And I would like to invite Wambui to tell us exactly what the African CEOs and the African farmers are talking about the opportunities on the African continent. Over to you, Wambui.
Thank you. Thank you, Valentine. Thank you very much for that introduction. And I would like to thank Dr. Kalibata and Benson for their wonderful and thoughtful opening remarks. Just give me one moment. Let me share the screen so that I can share the presentation. Okay. So can you see it?
Yes, Wambui, we can say put it in slideshow, please.
Okay,
yeah.
There it is. That's okay.
Yep.
Okay, so first, before I start, I would like to acknowledge the presence of the team that worked on this project. They are online, and I would also like to acknowledge the presence of agribusinesses who took part in the survey. It's really wonderful to see you as part of the audience, and I'm sure you're really curious to see what the results are of the survey that you undertook. For me, this is really, really interesting as an international development practitioner, because as Dr. Agnes said, the agribusinesses are at the center of this report. So what's interesting is that we're getting to hear from agribusinesses themselves what is important to them. And sometimes what happens in the development world is that we prescribe the solutions based on what we think is important to the businesses. But in this case, what we're saying is we're coming here and we're telling you, this is what we've heard from you, and this is what we understand is important to you as a business operating in Africa for you to thrive. So If we start from the beginning, so what was the survey about? We had two really important questions that we wanted to answer this year. This is the second time that we're doing the survey. The first survey was done in 2020 and 2021 was when we did the second survey. So we had two questions. The first question was, what are the most important private sector related barriers to growth, investment, and competitiveness of agri-SMEs, which they cannot tackle themselves? And then, what are the biggest public sector related barriers to growth, investment, and competitive of agri-SMEs, which can be tackled through government's priority setting and investment strategy? And these questions were really, really important. For each interview, we asked the businesses to tell us, what are your top 3 priorities? What are your top 3 challenges? What are your top 3 barriers to growth, barriers to investment, and barriers, and where are your top 3 investment opportunities as a business? This year, we also did things a little bit differently. We expanded the survey to cover 13 countries in total, which are AGRA's priority countries. And what I mean by the focus countries is that in those countries, we did one-on-one interviews. We targeted female CEOs and founders, and we also targeted regular male-led businesses as well. But for each, we had to make sure that at least 20% of the respondents were women. And then we also had a quantitative survey, which was an online survey, and that was filled out by respondents from all over Africa. In total, we had 177 respondents, so that's both online and qualitative interviews, one-on-one interviews. We had respondents from 18 countries, and we had about 114 organizations represented. So you'll see there the distribution of the respondents. In terms of the subsectors that are represented in the survey, we've got the entire spectrum of the agribusiness value chain, or the agricultural supply value chain. But what I would like to bring to your attention is that the dominant companies primarily are from the processing subsector, are involved in production and inputs. We also had contributions from enabling sectors, so such as information services, as well as technology and financial services. Majority of the respondents are SMEs. So by that, we mean that they have turnover of between $10,000 and $100,000. We also had just a little bit bigger, small companies whose turnover is under $3 million US. And another way of defining SMEs is also by defining them by the number of employees that they have. And again, we see that at least definitely 50% are SMEs. So the heart of the survey. So I said that this is the second year that we've done the survey. And the top 10 priorities this year was slightly different in a small way from the priorities in the previous year. Access to finance and related issues, issues related to access to finance was still the top priority for many agribusinesses. What was interesting was that they're calling for very, very innovative and creative ways of financing agribusiness. And this is not really surprising because we know that very little of commercial bank financing goes to the agricultural sector. We were pleasantly surprised to see that climate change, which was a new area that we were looking at this year, is a real priority for agribusinesses. So you will see here that access to finance for climate adaptation was among the top 10 priorities, making sure that farmers adopt climate smart farming practices was also featured among the top 10. Another area that is of great interest and is a top 10 priority for agribusinesses is also the area of partnerships. So this was a really interesting area for us because we saw the desire for public-private partnerships rise from priority number 55 in 2020 to becoming number 6 in 2021. Also, another big jump is in developing multi-stakeholder partnerships, which also jumped from 2020 from number 40 in 2020 to number 9 in 2021, which means that agribusinesses would really like to see a lot more partnerships and public-private interventions to address and improve the way they operate. The smallholder farmer, again, remains at the center of agribusiness priorities, and we see that in the sense that they continued to rank a second priority, just as they did in 2020. So we also decided to analyze and look at the data from agendaed point of view. We first of all made sure that we targeted women and made sure that we had female respondents in the survey. So we had about 20% of the respondents were women. The way women responded to the survey was very interesting for us, both from a qualitative perspective, but also in what they deemed as priorities. From a qualitative perspective, I would say that it's very hard. It's proven really difficult to find women in the agribusiness sectors, either as leaders in senior leadership or even as female entrepreneurs of successful businesses. And we think this is a huge area of development for everyone who is involved in the agribusiness sector. We want to see more women involved and running successful agribusinesses. Female respondents actually prioritized trade and participation in the African Free Continental trade area as a priority for them, more than the male respondents did. They also are more interested in using technology in their businesses and for their operations a lot more than the male respondents did. I think this gives us an opportunity to delve deeper into the information that is coming out of here and to serve women businesses better, which is one of the ways that I think we can use this survey. So as I said, access to finance remains a top priority for many agribusinesses. The key issues that agribusinesses face, for example, and they cited, is cost of money. Interest rates are really, really high. They also have a dearth of financial instruments that are accessible to them, but that also work for them. They also said that many financial institutions, when they are providing financing to them, have very complicated and complex financing agreements and complex terms and conditions. And the other big thing is even how to negotiate for financing is a very big deal and a big challenge for many SMEs. And so what we feel and what they indicated is needed is innovative financing mechanisms. And this speaks to everything from blended finance, where you use concessional finance from donors and mixed with commercial capital. It calls for climate finance solutions, given that climate change is a really big challenge for many businesses. It calls for gender finance, as we saw that women have also very different needs and different priorities than men operating in this space. It also calls for public-private partnerships, and it calls for a different way of lending to agribusiness, such as value chain financing. Climate change has emerged as a really, really big issue for agribusinesses, and this was a really, really big surprise for us. Every single agribusiness interview that we did, when we asked what is your top 3 priority, always everyone said climate change, how to address climate change in their operations, how to address climate change in their supply chain. And the reason why this is important is because Africa, despite the fact that it does not contribute as much to carbon emissions, is still the biggest loser in this space. If we don't address the issue of climate change and the challenge of climate change for our smallholder farmers and for the continent, we stand to lose about 2 to 5% of GDP per year. This is a huge loss considering the challenges that we faced in growing our economies. Around 52% of agribusinesses say that reducing greenhouse emissions is a top priority for them. And we were delighted that this is the first time that agriculture and food security was discussed in COP26. We hope that this is a trend that will continue because climate change needs to be at the front center of all our discussions going forward. Some of the issues and some of the areas that they would like to see addressed is, for example, promotion of climate smart agriculture to enable farmers to become a lot more resilient. Supporting farmers to adopt better production technologies, as well as also promoting awareness and supporting adoption of climate smart agriculture. Dr. Kalibata talked about the impact of COVID. And, you know, last year was really tough. We started this survey just after the second lockdown had been imposed in countries like Kenya. And just when we thought that things were going to improve, we then had another COVID variant grow around the world or spread around the world. Now, what surprised us in our survey is that while we thought that many businesses would say, oh, they're really tired of COVID, what COVID has done for them is that it has presented an opportunity and to address the challenge and to face the challenge head on. Many of them have adopted technology and pivoted their businesses. When we ask them, are they interested in shutting down the businesses? Actually, shutting down the business as a result of COVID is the last thing on their mind. And in our priority list, you will see it is the last priority for every single business. We think that a lot of attention needs to be paid to making sure that agribusinesses understand how to run their businesses using technology, but also that technology is made affordable. So some of the businesses that we spoke about the changes that were going on in legislature around the cost of, for example, mobile transactions, which at the time imposed during COVID really had adoption of technology. And there was a lot of lobbying that had to be done to make the government change their mind. And this happened, for example, in a country like Uganda. Across the continent, data is also emerging as a really, really big deal for very many businesses. We have a lot of companies who are providing services to their smallholders and their supply chains using technology, using mobile technology, using all forms of smart technologies. And with this comes huge opportunity and huge data that is available to the private sector and should be available to the public sector. We think that this is data that needs to be mined to serve our smallholder farmers and rural communities better. And as I said, as one of the survey respondents said, over the last decade, it used to be that the biggest player or the one who had the biggest opportunity was the one with the biggest balance sheet. But now it's evolving that the biggest player is the one with the largest amount of data, because then they have a huge market and huge opportunity which they can create. Another big challenge for SMEs is skills. So about 70% or more than 2/3 of the businesses that we spoke to spoke about investing in skills as a huge priority for them. And we know that this is a challenge for SMEs because first, it's an issue of affording to get the right skills, but it's also an issue of mindset. As we also, as I said earlier, also speaking to female entrepreneurs, there's a huge difference, particularly from a confidence perspective in the way they respond to the questions. And I know this is quite an issue, but I was very surprised by it. It's also an issue because we do not find, for example, many women in the sector, and it's all the way from at the lower levels to leadership and at the board level. And this is something that really needs to change, and agribusinesses need support in this area. So what are our recommendations coming out of this survey? The first is, given the importance of the enabling environment for the agribusiness sector, one of our recommendations is that it would be really good, for example, in a country like Kenya, to start in-country races. So just imagine, for example, if you had different counties competing on providing the best investment climate for agribusinesses. It would be fantastic, because then you have people focusing on doing the right things to support their rural communities and their rural businesses. The other thing that's also came through is we need to leverage technology to support the development of the free trade area on the continent. Many of the businesses that we spoke to do not know where to access information, what is going on, how can they export from Nigeria to Ghana, for example, or from Kenya to Nigeria, or from Kenya to Senegal. How do they go about that? And technology for us, we feel, is one of the easiest ways to make this information available. Climate change, as you have seen, needs to be addressed because it is the new frontier for agribusinesses, and it's not just no longer anything, something that should be handled by the West. It is affecting us here, and it is impacting our lives on a daily basis. The smallholder remains a priority, and everything that we do, if we are to move forward on the continent, then there is absolutely no way we can move forward leaving the smallholder behind. And making sure that our rural communities are served well and that they move forward economically is a priority, and the smallholder is a key part of that. We also need to make sure that we provide innovative financing for agriculture. And last but not least is making sure that we support our businesses to grow their business. And for this, we are recommending leadership and entrepreneurship training for the leaders. Agra is already doing some of this through their platform for female entrepreneurs, and we applaud this, and we think that this needs to be really developed further to make sure that it serves the agribusiness leaders better on the continent.
Thank you, Mboy. Are you done?
Yes, I'm done. Thank you.
Okay. I thought there was one more slide, Mboy.
Oh yes. Okay.
Yes.
So it's a very important slide. It is where to find the report. Yes. So the report is now live and it's available on the Agra website. This is the link. If you click on it, it takes you directly, and you will be able to download the report, understand the findings, as well as download the priority results so that you can see from first priority to the 66th priority what the results are looking like and what the businesses said. Valentine, over to you.
And Wambo, you will copy that link and share it in chat so that all our 206 delegates can be able to go on the website and download the report. Thank you so much. I mean, colleagues, if you're like me, you're really looking at a positive outlook for the African continent. I think the story of agriculture in Africa is the story of not the half empty glass, but the half full glass. Because amidst all these, issues, there is quite hope. And I was quite glad, Ambo, you did raise the issue that closing agribusiness is the last priority. And that for me gives me a lot of hope. And I don't think all the 206 delegates this particular afternoon agree with us. Please do share your questions and answer your questions in the question answer button that is provided for you. We will endeavor to respond to all of them. And if there's any that do need follow up, we will actually make sure that we make follow up. Wamboy, thank you so much. And colleagues, before we go into the question and answer session, I would like to invite our panelists, just having heard from Wamboy, having heard those key insights, to begin to give us some good feedback on what their initial thoughts are. I know they're listening to this report and they'll be thinking on their feet. So we do have a very strong panel this particular afternoon, and we have Victoria Sabula, who is the CEO of ACF. We have Matthias Grab, I hope I'm pronouncing your name well, who is the managing director of Bula. We have Shiru Waweru Waidaka, who is an entrepreneur and a co-founder and CEO of Fun Kids, but she's also into agriculture. We also have Ayodeji Bolagun, who is the CEO for Affects. And we have Hugh Scott, who is a veteran with us. So let me see, I hope all our panelists are there. Sure, it would be nice if we can get you on camera. Good. So as I told you, the panel will be giving us a bit of their reflections, having listened to the results of the feedback you provided to KPMG and AGRA. And before I invite them, let me just give a bit of a brief intro on each and every one of them, just to give you a flavor of who we will be listening to this afternoon. So Victoria Sabula is the CEO for Africa Enterprise Challenge Fund, which is, I believe, the Africa's largest challenge fund that deploys patient capital, technical advice, and drives market linkages, but also advocates for private enterprises in renewable energy, agriculture, and climate change. And prior to her position at ACF, she also worked at AGRA and also worked at KCB. So a very, very strong background in financing, but also in ecosystem development. And then we also have Matthias Grab, who is joining us this afternoon, this evening, this morning. And he's the managing director of Bula, of the Nairobi branch, and also the sub-regional director for Eastern Africa, including Uganda, Tanzania, and Uganda. Matthias is a management professional with extensive record in project management and has over 20 years of experience. So I do believe that expertise will really come to bear from his feedback this afternoon. We also have Shiru Waidaka, as I said. She's a serial entrepreneur and co-founder and the CEO of Fun Kids, but he's also into recycling timber and and really ensuring that we are cleaning up our environment. She's currently the chair of the Kenya Association of Manufacturers SME Hub, and she brings to this panel lots of experience in entrepreneurship, in in environmental management, but also her leadership at the Kenya Association of Manufacturing. As I said, we have our veteran Hugh Scott, and Hugh has lived on the African continent for over 40 years. So he's a truly African and has lots of experience working in private sector development, has lots of experience in policy and engaging governments, and has spent a lot of time at KPMG. And I'm sure, Hugh, we will be looking forward to your experience and expertise as you give us your opinion on some of the findings that Wambui has presented this afternoon. Finally, we have a good friend from Nigeria, Ayodeji Bolagun, who is the CEO for Affects, who are playing a very critical role in the supply chains of African processing agribusinesses, ensuring that they are building inclusive business models of engaging smallholder farmers, but also developing innovative financing solutions to be able to finance the supply chain of our major processors. So good afternoon, panelists, and it's really a pleasure to have you. And I hope you've really gotten some good views of the report that that Wambui has presented this afternoon. And I would like to quickly, share the first question to Matthias. So if, of course, Wambui did say a lot of the questions that were asked to CEOs were their top 3 priorities and their top 3 challenges. But from a policy, legal, and regulatory constraints perspective, so Matthias, how does it differ by country? And you are operating across and a number of East African, countries, listening to the findings that Wambui has, shared, your views on the policy and regulatory environment and the ease of doing business in the region. Over to you, Matthias.
Yeah, okay. You asked agricultural processors, and they, of course, answer from a 180 degrees perspective. And our customers, our partners in the market, they are telling us exactly the same. You find out, which you did find out in the study. On the other hand, personally, I have a different perspective. I also have to say, for example, there's always this topic coming up, access to finance, more flexible finance. And we are also very much involved in financing for requests we are getting for our customers. And I believe one big constraint at the very end is a skill set which is behind. So if you would ask me, it's not financing, it's not infrastructure. Africa is lacking on skills, and the agricultural sector is also lacking on skills.
Thank you so much, Matthias, for that. And Hugh, I don't know if you have any extra thoughts, especially given your experience in the policy environment.
I believe these policies, environments which are given are at the very end not holding you back, because they are not affecting you in the competition. All your competitors on the market are having the same problem, so you can say it's a big problem if you work on an international market. But if you're working on a domestic market, yes, maybe you have losses because of this, but you are not losing competitiveness because of this, because it's a problem for everybody. And on the other hand, I would like to refer again to this topic, access to finance, which was #1 on your list. And that's a topic we hear from everybody. And when we look behind and we offer financing solutions, then the problem is often showing up. People are not able to do proper business plans. Maybe they don't have a proper business plan. There are no assets behind, there are no securities behind. So at the very end, everybody is asking for risk capital. And I believe that is the biggest problem behind that. The bank financing, a classical financing, does not work, but also everything has to be brought in a proper structure.
Thank you so much. And so I just wanted Hugh Scott also just to chime in there, and especially Hugh. I mean, African governments have made a lot of progress in developing a better environment to do business. Your views, Hugh, on not only the issues but also some of the positive developments on the continent.
You've been broken up. I didn't get your last sentence.
Shall I carry on?
Isn't it from?
No, it is Hugh asking that question to.
Okay, I was just going to comment on the enabling environment side and just actually highlight that we have a byline for this survey which says making Africa an even better place to do business, and we underline the word even, and it's actually a very important word, because when you're looking out there, Africa so often has a reputation of not being a good place to do business. And what we're saying is actually, it is a good place to do business. But our job is to make that environment even better. It's not good enough to just say, you're making it better, because again, people think, well, if you're making it better because it's not good in the first place. And it's time that we swung that balance and we told the world we're a great place to do business. And we can have programs that make us even better places to do business. Some of that, I think, is in the core work that underpins a market system, whether it be an agricultural market system or another market system. We do have to get the policies right. We do have to get the laws right. We do have to get the regulations right. But actually, once again, our policies generally in agriculture are not bad across the continent. Our laws coming out of those policies are also not that bad. And even the regulations coming out of those laws is not bad. However, where's the problem? So often we let ourselves down on implementation, and the implementation of those regulations coming out of those policies proved to be the challenge. If you actually talk to business, they'll say, oh, it's not so bad that the tax or whatever it is, it's not the level of tax, it's the compliance cost of dealing with tax, etc., that causes the grief. The other thing I wanted to highlight is that business invests not on what the business environment is like today, but what they feel the business environment is going to be like in 5 years' time. They're not investing for today, they're investing for the future. Even if the business environment is not that great, if they believe it's going to get better, that will entice them to invest. And our job is to help the continent to be able to portray that, to say we're a place that's moving forward, where the business environment on the continent is improving, etc. How can we do it? Valentine, I think that this is a big part of Agra's agenda already. And I would hesitate to try to say Agra should do this or do that. You're in the business more than me. But I could see a place for a nice big facility alongside the AECF. And AECF concentrates on direct investment, and a nice big facility next door to it concentrating on the business environment. And the two together changing Africa for the better. Thank you.
The future is in Africa, and we completely agree. We are completely aligned. I completely agree with you. The future of agriculture is on the African, continent. And there's nothing more we can say. I'm actually very glad that you do raise that. So Victoria, I mean, priority number one: money, 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 money. And SCF has lots of experience funding, enterprises in agriculture and climate change and so on. Could you give us your view on, what are some of those key critical, innovations or, solutions that you have developed as SCF, but also what are some of the opportunities for funding women entrepreneurs? Because again, the report has raised the critical role that women entrepreneurs, do play. Over to you, Victoria.
Thank you so much, Valentine, and it was really a great pleasure to read the report and to hear once again finance to actually be the biggest challenge that the agri-SMEs continue to face today. I've just seen one of the attendees say, this has been such a long drawn problem. When will it end? But it will end when actually we get to, intentionally mobilize resources that are appropriate in respect of risk appetite for the sector. So what we find at the AECF really is that, agribusiness is a long-term game. You cannot invest in an agribusiness in Africa today and think like, in 3 years or in 5 years, you've scaled, and because the shocks are too many within the continent, and just the absorption capacity in the ecosystem for the different entrepreneurs is not there. So I think number one really is, for us, we see the criticality of matching the length in respect of funding availability tenure to the risks attendant to playing in the different value chains in the ag space. I think the other thing really that you raise is on women, and we do know that continually women are alienated because the systems as they exist presently for commercial financiers is not looking at the unique nature of women entrepreneurs. And when we talk about unique, it is that they don't have collateral to be able to present, just because of just the cultural issues in Africa today, where property rights are more to the advantage of the men. And then women also still have a challenge accessing the right partnerships and capabilities. A man can be able to call a friend and say, hey, you're an exceptional finance person. Can I work with you to be able to structure this deal and look at my capital structure? A woman, on the other hand, oftentimes will be hesitant to actually be able to reach out. So the capital, the social, intellectual, or otherwise, on the part of the women entrepreneurs is lesser. And this means that when they go and present themselves to any financier, they actually are deeming to fall short. What is the solution? It's really to ensure that we have funds that are created, and they have actually grown really in number and volume over the years. So we need to just continue ensuring that indeed this capital is being unlocked. It's not that we are saying, hey, there are women funds, we are saying actually we are ensuring that we are creating a pipeline, and that is part of what ACF does, creating a pipeline of women-owned, women-led businesses that in another few years will actually be able to tap into the commercial capital that is being made available to the ecosystem. But I think we really need to be able to all think about how everything plays, because we need to solve for everything. We need to solve for policy, we need to solve for finance, we need to solve for the value chains to somehow just get to work. Because when I look at my agribusinesses today, every one of them struggles to source for raw materials consistently. And what that means is that they can never be a trusted supplier on the other side of the external markets, as we have kept telling entrepreneurs, access different markets, but they cannot access those markets if the local market or the international market is not able to service their demand for raw materials for their business.
Victoria, that's such a breath of fresh air. So quite innovative solutions. I just want to swing over to Ayodeji. I mean, you are playing in the middle and connecting farmers to the processing industry, and I would really like to hear your views, because Wambui did raise the whole issue of how do we support smallholder farmers to increase their productivity. But I think for me the more critical question is how do we do it sustainably? But also, how do we support farmers to begin to adopt climate smart solutions and also tap into innovative financing solutions? So I mean, how do we create those backward linkages to ensure we have a food systems transformation?
Yeah, thank you, Valentin. Like my new slogan is climate is the new COVID, because it looks like COVID hit us real bad, climate may hit us real worse. And when we look at this, so only about 40 to 45% of most crop value chains gets into industrial use, either as raw material for production or goes into tertiary market and then goes into the table for consumption. Most others are. So if we have more than 5 to 7% shock in any of the commodity value chains across most of the country, we see significant price inflation, and then we see significant shortages. And this is something you need to local governments in any of the countries across East and West Africa to be affected with droughts for you to have 7 to 10% shock in crop outputs. So climate is the new COVID. We have to be very deliberate about our research work on the continent. We have to be deliberate about our practices and how do we start to plan for the next 5 to 10 years. Because the seed production in Africa takes about 3 years. So if today we had the genetic material to even roll out climate-friendly seeds, it'll take 3 years for it to get that. So we're 3 to 5 years late in the climate change struggle, particularly as it relates to smallholder farmers' productivity and income levels, but also the food systems for the continent. The second part is finance, innovative financial models. And this came out very strongly in Wambui's presentation and the research. Our commercial banks have failed us in agriculture. I think we all have to stamp and assess that fact that they neither provide a short-term capital nor the long-term capital in a way that works for the agricultural system. Smallholder farmers simply do not have access to cash from commercial funds. They get way more capital from their circles and from their family and friends than they would ever get. Producers on the other side can't get funding for the capex they need to be able to really drive productivity and increase food security. So we have to think blended finance. We have to think catalytic philanthropy. We have to think how can our donors start to say, how can my $1 in funding leverage $10 and de-risk that additional $10? And that's the only way we can claw in capital to then drive our food systems. Lastly, data. And this drives policy, it drives businesses, it drives prices, it drives strategy. When you have countries bring in cross-border trade policies that are protective or prohibitive, it is primarily because they just don't have data on what they have. And this is across almost all countries. No country today tracks its own food balance sheet in a way that it can say, this is what I have in areas of surplus and areas of deficits. So you then end up, what they do is to create blind policies that says, lock up my border because I'm in panic mode. But if we had data to say, this region had excess, this region has a glut, how can we move the products? And then that becomes what we need to solve. So policy will be smarter, business strategy will be better, prices will be more transparent if we have data. We must start to harmonize how we gather data across the continent.
Oh, I mean, I really quite, brilliant ideas. And, Hugh, I know we are just beginning to see the impact of the Russia-Ukrainian, I don't know if they call it a crisis. We're already beginning to see the impacts in terms of food supplies and so on. What's going to happen really? Wheat, maize, oil. I was with a team of people yesterday. We were meeting, and they were saying in Germany they're having a problem of cooking oil. I don't know. Any thoughts on how can Africa be better prepared, or how can we deal with it?
Yeah, sorry, I was slow getting rid of the mute. Well, that's a tough one, and I'm certainly no expert in this space, Valentine. But interesting though it is, the amazing thing is how important Ukraine is in terms of the world wheat market, particularly about 30% of the world's wheat. And this is going to have major impact on those particular markets. I don't know how much it will have an impact on the African markets, particularly in areas where our staple food is maize and things like that, which may not be affected as much as some of the others.
Matthews, you're dealing with our major processors. Any views on how can Africa be better prepared, or how can Africa deal with the crisis in Ukraine and Russia?
I actually don't know how to add to that. It's a very interesting perspective, isn't it? Because it always seems the other way. How can something from Europe impact on Africa? Can we impact on those markets and improve them, or et cetera, et cetera? Certainly a difficult one. In certain respects, I mean, it's going to put up food prices, isn't it? And yes. in something like that, it will improve the incomes of our farmers, in theory. I don't know what it means, but I would have thought that the world prices of food will go up, and therefore, as production in Africa, the value of that will increase.
So much, Hugh. I really wanted to come back to Victoria on the question of partnerships. You did mention around how to build better partnerships to be able to in your reference to women entrepreneurs. But again, looking at all the issues that have been raised from the report and some of the key recommendations that Wambui is raising, what's your view on some of the key partnerships across different institutions and organizations that we will need to build and design even as we move forward and as we draw towards the, towards 2030?
Thank you, Valentine. I think the one that quickly comes to mind for me is actually private-public partnerships. Is how do we look at how governments and the private sector come together to actually look at financing the agriculture sector and supporting the agribusinesses. I was just looking at the announcements that came out of COP26, and I thought there is a lot of resources that are now, pledged for purposes of climate action. And there is a lot that actually the ag sector requires to contribute to attend to climate change issues. So how do we look at, governments and private sector coming together in terms of blended finance to actually support? And I speak blended finance because I'm coming from the finance space. And so I'm saying, let's bring in government, private sector, and let's address climate through the agri sector. I think the other thing really is we are financiers as the AECF. AGRA is exceptional at engaging governments and building their capabilities in respect of addressing policy gaps. And then there is another partner who's exceptional at really just looking at value chains and why they are the most promising for a particular context, for a particular country. We need to just say every one of us has such an exceptional strength to bring to the table. And it is only when we actually bring these strengths to the table that we will get to succeed, and not remembering actually ensuring that we are actually treating the beneficiaries as a rightful partner and playing. So we're saying we are working with a smallholder farmer. What is that voice of the smallholder farmer, and what is their role as we build these partnerships so that we get to integrate really bottom up, so that even we who are seeking to provide solutions for the marginalized and the smallholder farmers are tailoring it to actually be fit for them. You know, look at climate information services, and I think it is coming out that actually most of the models that we have looked at in the past haven't really worked for the smallholder farmer. So the question is, how do we get to the point where we actually then say, okay, how will they adapt better if we actually don't get to draw from them on what will work? So we don't think about what will work for them, but we have them speaking to what they think work for them. Then we shape that in a way that actually is going to work for the future.
Thank you so much, Victoria. I want to shift a little bit into the questions that are being posed by our delegates, just to pose them to our panelists as we continue. Ayodiji, there's a question from one of our attendants who is asking, why are we still failing to feed Africa if we have arable and used land? What is hampering us putting into use this arable good land? Any of your views, on how we can, deal with that issue of arable land?
I think the biggest problem is that we continue to think land is the only thing we need to feed ourselves or to produce food. Agriculture is a science. If we don't have the skill, we don't have the research, and we don't have the capital, we're not going to produce anything. So land is less than 5% of the input that goes into.
We lost your voice, Bolabun. Could you just check on your voice?
Yeah. So land is less than 5% into agriculture. You need the skill and the research, you need the capital, and then you need the people to get the work done.
Thank you so much. There is another question, from Mr. Mbaka, and he's saying, how can finance be innovated to solve the problem for women-led agribusinesses in processing? I don't know, Victoria, if you would like to pick that, how do we work to support women agripreneurs in, processing to be able to access more money?
I actually think it is helping these women to actually be able to structure their ideas in a manner that actually comes out investable. Because the first thing to be able to get an investor to listen to you is that you must speak their language, which means you must be able to speak to them about what is your capital structure? How are you thinking about your sources of capital? They want to actually understand what is your financial model. They want to be able to see the sophisticated business, whereas a lot of our women businesses could still be at a level where, they're still growing. So I think really that building, helping them to be able to ideate and present to a sophisticated investor in a way that gets them to draw the capital. I think the other thing is really supporting from a pre-investment level on all aspects relating to the business. So helping really the women to get to appreciate all of the pieces that must come together in order for the businesses to be able to grow from one step to another. I think oftentimes as I work with entrepreneurs, people tend to think if I get capital, I'll be okay. Or if only someone gave me a chance, and then they just realize that so many things require to come together if they are to achieve their growth aspirations, from the human capital, from, as in figuring out the right investor and partner for them for the stage of growth of their business. Not everybody who is out there is the right one for your business. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Victoria. So Matthias, there is a question I'd like to pose to you from Zachariah Mali, and the question is, how can we develop long-term financing solutions given the various needs on the African continent?
Quite complex and very difficult to answer, I would say. I would say, and again, I believe if you want to have a long-term solution, a long-term financing, there's enough money in this world. Huh? So at the very end, funds are available, and everything is only about the access. And I believe Victoria, she expressed it quite nicely before. You have to talk the same language. You have to be able to express yourself. And you have to make a proper plan, which you also have to bring to paper. I'm coming back to the skill level. Every business is people business, and business and people is always two aspects. It's will and it's a skill, and the will is often available. The skill is often missing.
Wow, it is will and the skill is missing. So delegates, please keep tweeting. The hashtag is Africa Agribusiness Outlook. Tag at Agra Alliance, at KPMG East Africa, and if you know any of us, you can also tag our Twitter handles. Panelists, I really want to come back to you with just, you've listened to the report, you've listened to some of the key questions. I want you parting short, and I want to start with you.
Valentine, can I just interrupt for 1 minute because we've got Shiro Wedaka on the line?
Oh, yeah. Oh, she came back. No, Shiro, welcome. Sorry, we lost you for a minute there. I hope you have a good connection. I can see you in a car. I hope someone is driving you.
Yes. I've been here actually, Valentine, and I've been listening.
Oh, goodness. That's lovely. So, Shiro, one of the questions I really wanted to pose to you, and Victoria has touched a little bit on it, is, of course, women entrepreneurs face quite a number of key challenges. But you've been an entrepreneur. I mean, we've lost count of the businesses that you're now involved in. How have you, from your personal perspective, how have you managed to succeed? And we can then draw those lessons and support our women entrepreneurs.
First of all, thank you for the conversations. Success is relative. It's relative. Why I'm still, as we say, in the game of entrepreneurship is to change the narrative. I've loved listening to everybody. The reason why people say women entrepreneurs, we're not bankable, we don't have skills, is it because it's somebody else's language. It's somebody else's language, literally. The blueprint for success for an African woman is not created for us. The woman has so many challenges, the children in the morning, the livestock, everything. Yet you're supposed to sit and write what we call in Kenya, Kizungu Mingi. In Kiswahili means a lot of English. We don't have the time to do that. It's not that we don't have the skill. I feel we're not creating it based on our template that is our reality. I mean, I'm in business, I'm educated, and I struggle. What about the other women who do not even have half of what I have, right? I think it's unfair. It's a very unfair playing field when we go to financiers and they want us to be exporting in the tons and maybe avocado and stuff. It's expensive. It takes long to grow. We literally just want to grow spinach, skuma that grows quickly, right? That we're able to feed our own. I've just passed a market as we're driving. It's 6 p.m. The produce has been out for so long. Why aren't we drying food? Why aren't we canning food? Why must it be fresh produce according to somebody else? If I'm to export to Ghana, wherever, there's no way it will go fresh, our reality. But I feel the solutions are not for us. We're using somebody else's template. I don't know if I've been heard. So I stay in the game because I must be part of the change and not just complain about this.
So Shiro, we need to change the template. We need to change the template and ensure that it's
we have no choice
the language of the woman entrepreneurs. Yeah.
It's 2022. Yeah. We're still here. We're still saying women can't. It's not true. Women from a long time ago are farming. Yes. We've been farming. We don't need acres and acres. We need to farm food that is relevant to us, that feeds us. I just came home from a trip. I went and checked my kitchen garden, and my spinach and my skuma wiki, or we call it kale, has been thriving. We've harvested cabbage and all the other fancy foreign foods. It takes so long to grow. Why do we grow it? Then we're told, oh, you're not focused enough. No. We need to feed ourselves.
I think, Shiro, there's a bit of a problem with your connection.
Sorry, we need to feed ourselves is what I'm saying, right?
because if also not feeding ourselves right now, this crisis in Ukraine about the wheat. Why do we have to eat wheat then? Why can't we grow cassava, which grows in our soils?
Yeah, sure. I think we've lost it. It's a bit hazy, I think. Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Barely hear it. Now, okay, now that's slightly better. And
I'm
you
saying,
just have another minute.
So this crisis in Ukraine about wheat, why must we eat wheat? Why can't we eat cassava and all the other indigenous foods in Africa? Why are we in a crisis about food somewhere else? Why aren't we growing our indigenous food and feeding ourselves with that? It confuses me because the template is not ours, right? So we need to change this, please.
Thank you so much, Shiro. I mean, Hugh, as I was saying, I just wanted to hear the parting shot, and Shiro has just brought some light to it. What are your parting shots, Hugh?
Actually, just one little thing. It's just interesting. You know, we've talked about the enabling environment for business, how important that is, underpinning agribusiness. We've talked about access to finance and how critical that is. We've talked about skills. We've talked about other things, but I've not heard once mentioned, and even though we've talked about climate, we've not talked about education. We've not talked about water. We're working with Agra and about the green revolution in Africa, and as you know, the green revolution in India, which we're in a sense was at one time known as the tube well revolution, where actually it was a revolution about water to the farm rather than seed varieties and other things. Core to that was water. I think core to a lot going on in Africa is water, and we have under irrigation, just a minute percentage of the land is under irrigation. I'm not necessarily proposing large-scale irrigation schemes and those kind of things. We've got new technologies now. We've got solar water pumps on individual farms. They can pool the water for reasonable, etc., etc. And irrigation is transformative. You're not talking about just improving the smallholder's income by 5 or 10%. It's transformative in terms of that. So I don't think it should be forgotten. I think there is room for an irrigation fund for Africa. Put a few $100 million together and really kickstart it and make it happen. It's exciting. It can make a big difference. So that was my parting shot. Don't forget irrigation.
And Victoria just had you. And that's why we are talking of the food systems, no longer about food security and all these climate smart, solutions. IODG, 30 seconds, your parting shots.
Data. I think, let's look at data. Let's look at cross-border trade. Let's be able to say how much food we've produced and what we have left. That will be super important for us as a continent.
Thank you so much. Matthias, your parting thoughts, your last reflections on the report.
Yeah, I was listening to my colleagues, so I fully agree to this point. Agricultural is science, was nicely said. Victoria was pointing out financing is over-evaluated. And I believe Africa has to change and this input, maybe we go for simpler, easier food, go away from wheat, which is extremely increasing at the moment, price-wise, and try to feed the continent by themselves should be the future of this continent.
Thank you so much, Matthias. Victoria, your parting thoughts?
So continually we talk about finance being a challenge. And I want to say this because I know a lot of people who have dialed in are entrepreneurs, and in sub-Saharan Africa, it takes two to tango. I provide patient capital at the AECF. The funders and the team work to just find investable businesses. And even as patient as our capital is, we still struggle some of the times to find the right businesses. We must do our part as the African entrepreneurs, Africa's based businesses, in order to tap into the capital that is already available, even as we speak about the need for further capital to be made available.
Thank you so much, Victoria. Wamboi, you led the team that put together this wonderful report. How do you want us to use it? You have 30 seconds, Wamboi.
Yeah, so I think that our recommendations really need to be taken to heart. I'm very happy to see that the results are of such great interest to everyone. There are very simple solutions. So personally, like for example, I love what Victoria is doing. I love what Ayodeji is doing in the warehouse receipt financing space. I think that, as we've said, agricultural reforms are the ones in every single country that has moved forward in the world. In the West, it has been agriculture that has led the way. So we must be very intentional and very specific to making sure that we create the best environment for our businesses to thrive. And finally, my last word is for women. I think Victoria has spoken about it. Shiro has also spoken about it. And I think, and one of the members of the audience spoke about it, the issue of sociocultural factors. So we really have to be intentional about making sure that we bring women to the leadership table in the ag sector. I don't want to do another survey and just say the same thing again. I can't find women senior executives. The boardrooms have to change. Otherwise, we're not going to have a difference and make an impact on the continent.
Thank you so much, Wambui. Thank you, panelists. I'm really very appreciative of your views, the thought that you have shared this afternoon. Thank you so much. Let's put our hands together for our panelists. So delegates, I would like to go into the closing session of this particular afternoon, and I would like to call upon Jennifer Ban, who is our Managing Director of the Africa Green Revolution Forum, to give us a bit of a rallying call. But also, Jennifer, as you do that, there's a last question that has come from Aime Garlas Quizera, who is asking, how can we attract more DFIs and other impact investors into the agribusiness sector? So as you give your views, I think that's a question you can be able to answer for us as you do that. Welcome, Jennifer.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Valentine, and good afternoon, everybody. Congratulations to the panel, to Wambui as well for a fantastic presentation, and Dr. Kalibatov and Benson for the inspirational remarks, and of course everybody who worked on this report. But also thank you to many of the participants, the hundreds of participants on the chat, because I really enjoyed many of your comments coming through and some of the questions. There is an eagerness and an energy to improve in this space, and it's a privilege really to work with all of you to make that happen. Now, it's interesting what you're asking, Valentine, in the sense like, how do we attract more investments? And that is precisely the reason why we established the Agribusiness Deal Room at the Href Summit that takes place every year in September. Because a few years ago, this question was also bugging us, yes, right? Where is the pipeline of all these SMEs and businesses? Where are the zeros that all these investors or financiers and other funds are looking for? And we managed to create a matchmaking platform with hundreds of SMEs participating. And we've therefore proven to the entire ecosystem that a pipeline is there. The SMEs are there. Some of the challenges are there. But we need to improve how we match the available funding to basically the demand. And I really liked what came forward also from Siru and also the rest of the panel. It's a lot more than the money. Yes, the report is also reflecting that access to finance is a challenge. We need innovative finance, etc. But there's so much more that is required. And it's about skill sets, capacity, but once again, the proper match between what is needed on the ground and basically the type of capital that is available, and the energy and the skills and the information that we bring to the table to support this entire pipeline of companies of progressing. But I think I'm digressing a bit, because one of the things I really would like to do is invite everybody to continue this dialogue, not only in your offices and in similar webinars and panels, but from the 5th to the 9th of September, we will have the Href Summit in Kigali, in Rwanda, in person. We will have the Agribusiness Deal Room, where many of the key decision makers and investment funds, etc., will be participating as well. And we would love to have you there and further deepen these discussions and dialogues as well. So, as a closing remark speaker, I think it's my responsibility to just give a reflection on the conversation that we've had. just now. And what was really striking, as I mentioned before, right? What came out of the report across the board is that finance is quite critical, and we discussed this extensively in this conversation. But I really liked also that there is a growing emergence or awareness that climate change, putting in the word of Ajoje, that climate change is like the new COVID. And that there's awareness that we need to also develop tools, instrument, more information on climate change and strengthen adaptation to make sure that we address this challenge. But yes, there is so much more in agriculture. For example, it's not just about seeds, it's also water and other types of inputs which are critical to many of our farmers and our entrepreneurs alike. In terms of thinking of solutions, what I found quite interesting is the awareness that nobody can do this alone. Yes, there's a great responsibility for governments to create an enabling environment. I loved, Victoria, that you highlighted that there's also a part on the SMEs to play. We do see it emerging also every year from the deal room as well, and to the private sector engagement and interaction. Everybody needs to step to the plate, but we also really need to look at different models of how we work together in this space to create new tools, new forms of financing, but also new business models that actually do work on the continent itself. What I took away, and I mentioned the energy as well, is really the optimism that still resonates despite all the challenges, etc. And I think even in the context of some of the global challenges, like what we saw in the Ukraine, what we're seeing in the Ukraine and the impact that it has on food prices worldwide, there is still a question emerging from key actors on this continent, like why aren't we processing food in Africa itself? Why is it that a food crisis somewhere else is our biggest problem, whereas we can change our diets, we can grow food here, etc. And that approach to continue to seek for solutions that work on this continent, I think that's important. And agricultural investment is a long-term game. That is quite critical. We're not just investing for now, but definitely also for the future. And we should talk about and look into how are we shaping solutions, opportunities, and reforms also for the entrepreneurs and the businesses to come. Ladies and gentlemen, it's really been quite an exciting session. This is also the opportunity to call for further action from all different stakeholders and to continue to work on a better enabling environment to put in place all of those different instruments, and for institutions like ACF and AGRA and the knowledge partner KPMG to continue to support this work that we're doing. I also have an additional responsibility to officially open the Agribusiness Deal Room at the Href Summit, and therefore call upon businesses, whether you're an SME, whether you're a large private sector entity looking for value chain partners. The matchmaking platform that we have is not just only to find equity investors, it's also to look for partnership opportunities to engage with DFIs, actors and implementing partners who are developing programs. The deal room is hereby officially opened. You can go to the website of the Href. It will appear in the chat box, www.href.com to register. So I'm welcoming you to the Href Summit. Our theme for this year is Grow, Nourish and Reward, Bold Action for Resilient Food Systems. And I'm counting on each and all of you to help to continue to take bold actions on a daily basis to make sure that our food systems flourish. Thank you very much, Valentine. Back to you.
Thank you so much, Jennifer, and you're all welcome to the Agribusiness Deal Room. Delegates, I have shared the link to the report in chat. Please click on the report, and as I said, keep tweeting. The hashtag is Africa Agribusiness Outlook, and remember to tag KP at KPMG East Africa at Agri Alliance so that we can spread all these good results that we have seen, a report of which you all contributed to. So with that, I would like to say thank you so much for spending the past hour and a half. Thank you so much to our very able panelists. You've done a fantastic job. Thank you so much to Jennifer. As a matter of fact, this particular session today is part and parcel of the knowledge session of the Agribusiness Deal Room. That is part and parcel of the Africa Green Revolution Forum that is led by Jennifer. So thank you so much, Jennifer, for your leadership. Thank you, the KPMG team, Benson and team. We truly appreciate, the diligent work that you have done in collecting the information, but most importantly, in distilling it and giving us in bites in which we can be able to digest. And finally, it's also my honor to thank Dr. Kalibata for really providing the leadership, not only to AGRA, but to the African continent, especially during the Food System Summit. And even as we continue into the implementation, we truly value the remarks that you made this afternoon. Thank you so much. We do look forward to continue to engage. Read the report, do reach out to us, and we will ensure that we do the right things for the African continent. Goodbye, good evening, and good morning.